Hey baby, I hear the blues are calling, tossed salads and scrambled eggs. Quite stylish. And maybe I seem a bit confused. Yeah, maybe, but I got you pegged.
Luckily for you guys, we're not confused at all. We're here to talk about Frasier this week and next, and it's going to be quite the fun experience for everybody. I'm Spencer Hendricks. I'll be the host. I'm joined by a couple of people. Let's start with, I never know which one of you to start with. Let's see. Brian Vaughn, what the dickens are you doing here?
Oh dear, Mr. Hendricks. Well, I've assembled here today with you and Mr. Lee to discuss Frasier, a television show that once aired on the NBC network.
Sounds accurate. Now, Van Lee, how about you? Are you excited about pigskins flying tomorrow? It's football day, you know that?
Not even remotely excited about that. I'm mostly confused because came prepared to talk about Monkey Bone as well as The Mummy and that one with Elizabeth Hurley where she was the devil. What are we talking about today?
So you are a bit confused then. The opening song was correct in your case.
Yeah, very much.
Yeah.
Bedazzled, that's it, yes.
Just a bit of background there. Of course, we do record ahead of time like every podcast does, so it's not actually football tomorrow when you hear this, but it is for us today.
Yeah, today is 9/11 when we were recording this.
Never forget. Let's get into this first Frasier episode, but we have to do a little bit of the background first on it, so we'll get into the premise of the show. It ran from 1993 to 2004.
Gotta stop you there already. How was Frasier on the air in 2004?
It is weird.
That's mind-blowing.
That seemed just nuts to me. I thought if you would have put a gun to my head, which please no one do, I would have guessed that Frasier probably ran from like 91 to 99 or something.
That sounds right. And yeah, to me, it seems like as a person who watched many of the early episodes that it's one of those shows that clearly had way too many seasons at the end that it shouldn't have had. But that's due to overwhelming success, of course. So they just kept running them out there. So, of course, this is a spinoff of Cheers, which was also insanely popular, and Frasier was a very popular character on that. So it was pretty much guaranteed to succeed from the beginning. It's an NBC show, 11 seasons, tons of awards, just a super popular show, very successful. And it follows the main character, Harvard-trained psychologist Frasier Crane, I should say, in his new life in hometown Seattle. From Boston, because that's where Cheers takes place. But the creators wanted to take him as far away as they could from that setting so that they weren't threatened by... They didn't want to feel obligated to bring Cheers characters on as guest stars, apparently.
They weren't threatened by Ben Affleck.
Yeah, they wanted to get it out of that area and start fresh, make a new thing for him. So they made his hometown Seattle. And
actually, any number of threats could occur in Boston.
Yeah, and Seattle's a little safer in that regard. So that was the idea there. And, you know, of course, he's coming off his divorce at the end of Cheers. So
to Lilith, is that right?
That's right.
Okay.
So this is his fresh start. And of course, he takes his dad and dog Eddie in with him in his nice, fancy apartment, which I did always think was really well decorated.
It rules. I love the ledges. It's like what Kramer says he's going to build in Seinfeld with the different levels in the apartment.
It's pretty modern, too, for that time period, I feel
Other
like.
than the decor, it's very modern. The design is.
I do like the coffee table. I've always thought that was cool. I would take that now. But anyway, I've always thought that was a cool apartment, and it does hold up. And, of course, we've got Daphne, who Frasier hires as the caretaker for his dad, Marty. And then Roz, his producer. That's the main cast, and Niles' his brother.
And there's a dog in there.
I did mention Eddie.
Oh, that's right, Eddie. Eddie's the dog's name.
What did
Who did I think Eddie was? Eddie Money or something? Like Eddie Murray?
Yes, yeah.
Any Eddie whose last name starts with M?
So I'll go over the cast again here when we talk about who actually played them toward the end. But yeah, that's the basic rundown. The themes are Frasier and Niles clashing with Marty because Marty is a little different than his sons. We'll get into that a lot over the course of these episodes. And then Frasier and Niles clashing with each other because they have sibling rivalry, of course. And then the whole thing is really built around the fact that Frasier and Niles are so good at helping others, but can they help themselves? So
that old chestnut. Those who cannot do, teach. That's what some people say.
I think sometimes it can be pretty accurate. And of course, Niles' marriage issues, future romance with Daphne, Martin adjusting to retirement. Those are other things that come up through the course of the show, which, as I said, ran for 11 seasons, probably about 5 or 6 too many. It won 37 Primetime Emmys. The reboot's coming in 2022. We talked about that
Yeah.
on one of the bonus episodes.
Have you read or seen anything about like what the angle is to have a reboot, like what the premise is going in?
What I did read is, or hear, I watched a few YouTube videos about behind the scenes and talking to Kelsey Grammer and all that, is it's going to take place in a new city. So much how
He's
they
moving
moved
again.
Frasier to Seattle, he's now moving somewhere else. To
I wonder where he'll go now.
So it's going to be like the real world, where it'll be like Frasier, Seattle. That's what they'll rename the OG series. And then this one will be like Frasier, Sacramento.
And apparently most of the cast is coming back. Of course, the father, John
Mahoney.
Mahoney,
Yeah.
he passed away, so he can't come back. But most of the core cast is returning,
Eddie.
which to me
It'll be
would
a different Eddie. Yeah, they had multiple Eddies in the first show, actually.
Did
but
they?
They retired him, though. I mean, I'm sure they're dead now, but when they changed Eddies, it wasn't because the dog died. It was because he got old and they wanted his son, Moose, to do it.
Moose.
I forget what the dog who played Eddie's name was. But of course, he was always Eddie in the show.
That was Daniel Day-Lewis.
He didn't suddenly change to Moose. But yeah, Moose took over at some point. So
yeah, I'm a dog. I'm going to use a pseudonym for this show.
I imagine there will be some version of Eddie. I don't know. I don't know what they'll do with no Martin. So I guess they don't need Eddie. But Eddie's pretty popular.
Yeah.
So did you guys know he received? Of course you didn't. He received more fan mail than any of the characters.
That
Fan
is
mail?
genuinely surprising, because I can't believe people aren't basically pounding down John Mahoney's door with fan mail.
I don't.
You don't want to write
understand.
Eddie a letter?
Not even just that. Just who sits around is like, I got to get in touch with Frasier. Kelsey
Well, a lot
Grammer.
of people didn't have
That's
the
what I'm
internet
talking
yet.
Yeah, this is a while ago. But also, they just want to tell him how great he is. Then sometimes you need to write the person to tell him that.
I
Sometimes
wrote
you have to hear it.
Sometimes you gotta
Otherwise,
get your old-
wackiness happens, huh? Because the show we're about to.
That's very true. Some interesting notes before we get into the actual cast is that Lisa Kudrow was almost Roz and Rosie Perez was almost Daphne.
Rosie coming back
Perez,
around in
yes.
Boob Tube Boys.
We talk about
Constantly.
Rosie Perez like all the time. Way
I
too
just
much.
watched the first season. There's only one season right now of a show called The Flight Attendant on HBO Max, and Rosie Perez is one of the actors in it.
I didn't know she still did anything.
Yeah, she's very good.
Well, good for her. I'm glad she's sticking around.
Now, Kudrow, I know they had in the role of Roz, but what they decided they wanted Roz to be, and I'll try and say this as verbatim as I can, is that she was, of course, Frasier's boss at the radio station. They wanted someone who Frasier is her better in every situation except at the radio station where she holds her own. And they didn't feel Kudrow was able to, have that presence, that domineering ability over Frasier.
Yeah.
Strikes me as a lighter actor,
Yes.
like a goofier actor, in
She's
a good way.
at that.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
Did you guys know, by the way, this is kind of related to the cast. Were you aware that Kelsey Grammer, when Frasier started, not even Cheers, was only 38?
That's it?
Wow.
Wow.
Yeah.
No, I did not know that.
He's a very
I would have
48, 38
I would
when the
have thought
series
like
starts.
45 to 48 or
Yeah,
something. Yeah,
me too.
But not that he looks bad or anything.
No,
it's just, he looks,
it's just he has a very like
plus the way he acts, like he just acts so old and
the guy was
dignified.
born 50.
Exactly. Yeah. Interestingly, we have two British actors, both of which had to do different things with their accents here. Daphne, played by Jane Leaves, I think is how you say it. Jane Leaves. Jane Leaves. She had to have a different kind of British accent, so she needed to do extensive voice coaching for this role because her natural dialect didn't fit what Daphne was supposed to be. So she had to train for it, even though
That's
she was already
dedication.
British. And John Mahoney, he had to hide his British accent. But
I did not know he was British at all.
He was.
I
But
didn't until
More
last
later.
week.
More later, too, yeah.
He moved at a young age, like he was 19 when he moved to Chicago, and he did it on his own just because he wanted to blend in, is what he said. So he'd already been practicing that, and you can tell he did a good job because, yes, it's a very convincing, not British accent in the
It's
show.
not a convincing Chicago accent. It'd have to be something like that. Yeah, there's a hot dog over there. You hand me that hot dog, and then I'm gonna go watch the Cubs play. Sort of.
And I mentioned this already. Ed received the most fan mail, which Van hates for some reason, but Eddie's he's the
So,
most lovable character.
You guys never sent anyone fan mail?
I haven't, no.
I don't understand the type of person who does this. Tell me, Brian.
I sent Ken Griffey Jr. fan mail
No,
as a
you
child.
didn't.
Yes, I did.
I don't see anything wrong with it, but no, I haven't done it either.
Even then, I was like, I'm one person out of a billion.
Well, I
Why
was
do they
8,
care?
and I did not understand that kind of thing.
Did you get a response?
No.
How'd you even know where to send it?
Okay, Beckett had these little things in the back of each issue. Beckett is a baseball card collecting magazine, for those who don't know, and valuation guide. I assume it's still around. and in the back of it, they would have like team facilities you could send letters to. And like, I sent like 3 letters, like spread out over the course of that year, where I sent it to the Mariners team facility or whatever, where allegedly, and there was kind of a caveat, they're like, players might respond. No, they don't. I mean, maybe Russ Davis responds.
Before we actually get into this episode, I'm going to tell you exactly who the cast is, since we talked about the potential cast and some of the other facts about the show. So, of course, Frasier Crane is Kelsey Grammer. Niles Crane is David Hyde Pierce. Martin Crane is John Mahoney, who actually had quite a career. I looked at it. He was in some interesting things I wouldn't have thought.
ECW as Balls Mahoney.
I can't remember any of them because I didn't think it was important enough to write down, but I was surprised. He had a good career. Good for you, John Mahoney. And then Daphne Moon was Jane Leaves. We talked about her. Roz Doyle was Perry Gilpin. I think she did some voice work. A lot of these people kind of just did voice work. I think David Hyde Pierce was in A Bug's Life. So some of these things that they did happen. We had a few careers, but mostly it's Kelsey Grammer, who mostly, apart from this and Cheers, is known for Transformers on IMDb. Did you know that?
Kelsey Grammer?
Yeah.
What?
He's not known as the Rumble from Money Plane?
I was wondering about that. I was like, is that going to be somewhere on his credentials?
And they keep giving him TV shows because he had one recently,
I forgot.
too.
What's that one he's on where he's a mean, powerful guy?
Yeah, that's the one I'm thinking of, and I have no idea. But yeah, so they just keep going. You know what we need to do? We need to get Kelsey Grammer back on the air nightly.
Look,
that's how good.
I don't know if there's enough material, but Stars is on the line about doing a Down Periscope series.
Is it called Billions by chance, or is that a different thing?
That's a show, but that has the
Paul
Rock in it.
Giamatti is in.
Oh, okay. Yeah, sorry. Got Kelsey Grammer and Paul Giamatti confused
It
there.
happens.
So also the last guy, but he's not in, well, he is briefly in one, and that's Bulldog. who's Dan Butler.
Bulldog.
I feel like, he didn't really deserve to be mentioned, but he is on there. He's on some of their artwork with the rest of the characters, so I had to bring him up.
Yeah, plus, I mean, one assumes that after the episode we're covering today, he probably wound up in jail for voyeurism.
Yeah, no, he does not come off well at any point, but he's never coming off well. He's always a jackass.
And that's the point, right?
But he went a little beyond jackass in this episode. It was really funny. There was a scene when he first entered where it's subtle, but Roz rolls her eyes when she sees him, and it's perfect.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's exactly the reaction that guy would get.
Yeah, because he's definitely like some sort of like sports DJ / shock jock guy.
Right, yeah, and he's just a huge douche. Like, his on-air is actually his personality.
But he looks like what Todd Barry will look like in 10 more years.
I think of Jim Rome when I think of Bulldog.
Yeah.
That's who I think I don't know what based on, but that kind of person.
It's not terribly far off, I don't think, yeah. At least Jim Rome doesn't have an annoying lisp and say, "Hey, sports fans," though, at the start of everything. Although he might. I haven't listened to Jim Rome in like 20 years now.
I don't know if he's still around or alive.
I think he is still doing well.
Well, that's silly.
Yeah, he's had quite a career.
He's not quite as popular as James Venice.
Yeah, I don't know who that is.
It's just me using the same name and then another Italian city. Yeah.
I thought maybe it was a guy.
No, it's just the worst joke that will be told on this episode.
It's bold.
No, we'll cover that. At some point, someone will tell a far worse.
I thought when you said what you were going for, you did that on purpose. So
no,
it could have worked.
It was a failed gambit.
So this first one we're doing, we're coming back and doing some more Frasier next week, but this week we're doing season 3, episode 23, The Focus Group. Frasier obsesses about a newsstand owner who expressed a negative opinion about his show. That's the whole thing. Let's move on to the next episode.
Yeah, you covered it, all 23 minutes
And the newsstand owner's played by Tony Shalhoub. That's something.
I don't know who that is.
He was Monk in Monk.
Oh,
That's his big claim to fame.
That's amazing.
And the taxi cab driver on Wings.
Yeah.
Well, so he's actually an actor then.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, I didn't know that. I mean, he was perfectly effective. It's just this episode.
I believe an Emmy Award-winning actor.
This episode is lacking substance about as much as any show we've watched.
This is the most, we're going to talk about this after we're done talking about the show more. But I do want to say I was not pleased after watching this first one because I haven't watched any Frasier in a while. And I thought it was a little more elevated than this kind of boilerplate sitcom. And it proves to be later. But this episode is not good.
Well, and Van, when you said you picked one good one and one bad one, I didn't know which one was which. And I was like, if this is the good one, I don't know why I ever liked Frasier.
I thought that too. And then when about halfway into the second one, I was like, I know which one the good one is.
Yeah, there's some clever writing in that one at least, although it's still not, I don't remember either one of these as a kid. And I've seen so many Frasiers, but I don't remember either one of these. And I liked, they did some clever stuff in the one we'll cover next week, but it was still it's not going to be anyone's cup of tea here. We're not going to. Although, I have gotten caught in some adult Frasier loops, just not substantial ones.
Have you seen anyone about that problem?
I could see Frasier.
That is meta, yeah. I've got the psychological problem of which it's about a psychologist.
A fictional psychologist. He's called the Rumble.
Well, if you guys are insistent that I actually cover the show, even though we already did with that synopsis, let's start it off. It's in Frasier's nice apartment. Daphne's upset she can't celebrate her and Joe's 6-month anniversary because he's off in Vegas with the boys. Niles pops in, everyone pops in sitcoms all the time, and immediately rants about an unscrupulous art dealer. Niles is accused of damaging art. This is really brutal already.
Yeah, well, this whole intro scene is just a bunch of like, I'm rich and so are you. My painting's been like the joke is, it's very shallow satire. I guess.
I noticed you guys didn't have anything to say about the opening in either one of these. It's just a Frasier colored background.
Little tinkling of piano.
For once, there's nothing to talk about.
So you watched this intro then, Spencer?
Yeah, it is green in this one and just, I think, blue or something in the next. I didn't watch that close.
That is true. I think the second one spiffed up a little more.
Yeah, it looks a little different. I guess they were going for the Emerald City or something in this. I don't know. I'm just guessing. Seattle.
What I will say is this is the second show in a row where an episode opens with someone making an obnoxious fucking noise on a plate because Daphne's eating something and she's scraping against the plate. And Martin, I think, reaches over and just like stops her physically. And I don't like noises like that, and I don't know why anyone thinks it's a good thing to do. This is going in your
Entertainment Weekly review of Frasier.
Yeah.
So you were really on board with Martin's decision in that scene, then. You liked Martin.
Martin is the most likable character on the show.
I did not know that. As a kid, I didn't like Martin. So, but I really did this time.
You have to, considering whatever, like the attitude that Niles and Frasier are always.
Martin seems so level-headed, too. Like, come on, guys.
Yeah. Well, they get out of hand pretty easily. So after this little part here where Niles pops in and we get the intro, this is where the premise of the episode comes up when Niles asks about lunch and Frasier says, I can't. I've got a focus group at work. So I've got to go do that, and it's really going to be annoying. We get a little bit more of this call. Niles receives a phone call with the estimate of $4,000, screams at him. Daphne sits down to watch her talk shows. Niles makes fun of her for watching the talk shows.
You simpleton.
They get into a big fight because she feels judged, and fairly so. And then they make up, and Niles is very turned on from the exchange somehow.
Yeah, Niles basically has a fucking pants tent just because he argued with Daphne for like 45 seconds.
Yeah, I guess he didn't get that at home with Maris.
Maris never would argue with me.
Look, if you want to have the image or the thought of David Hyde Pierce having a fully clothed orgasm, Frasier's the show for you, because that's exactly what goes down here.
It's
both
pretty
episodes,
awkward.
kind of.
Yeah. It's not easy to watch that. So it was actually a rather fortunate thing that it switched over to the radio station at that point. And then we get to meet the focus group, and this whole thing is kind of weird too.
Well, real quick too, back in that scene, they do this whole gag about Martin because Joe or whatever the boyfriend's going to Vegas, and Martin does this bit about the topless history of the world because it's so fun. But what I wanted to point about that conversation, point out, is that they talk. He says something. The joke was about, I wonder if they have the thing Bathsheba, and this is when you can tell he's British, because in saying Bathsheba, he says Bathsheba. He has that R that British people get at the end of the word, and I caught it and I backed it up to listen because I didn't know he was British until after this episode. So I was
you also did not know that he liked to eat meatballs injected with cheese.
I mean, that sounds pretty good.
Which is mentioned in the scene, which I thought was cool. Also, I was not paying attention. I watched this episode twice. The first time I watched this episode, I was kind of drifting off a little bit, not paying full attention.
Understandable.
And I just heard the line come out of Niles' mouth, "Why did Dad tell us to never fight with girls?" And I was confused about the context
like
of
what a physical fight.
Yeah. David Hyde Pierce is like beating up school children.
Well, you guys had a lot more to say about that scene than I did. I was done with it.
I skipped 4 notes. So.
Well, that Topless History Museum has Eleanor Roosevelt playing around in pudding also.
With Ava Braun, to see who wins the war.
Yep.
At the radio station, we've got the focus group, and they're shown listening to the show as it concludes. The early feedback is great. The focus group seems to be really honing in on Roz and her sexy throaty laugh, and just that she seems sexy, basically.
That woman sounds like she just eats cigars between 2 pieces of bread every day for lunch. It's so hot.
One of the women in the focus group I just recognized, so I looked her up on IMDb. Her name's Lynn Shay, and she's been in fucking everything. So I guarantee you people out there have seen her. A couple of the examples are she was the flight attendant in Snakes on a Plane.
Oh.
I wanted to bring that one up.
That is relevant to our interests.
But what really stuck with me with her, and I will always picture her, is, do you guys remember the movie Kingpin? The bowling movie?
With, Woody Harrelson.
She is Woody Harrelson's landlord, the one who does the tongue between the fingers.
Yeah.
That's her. She was real gross in the movie.
That was right around this time,
Wow.
too.
So they really packed some people in that focus group.
And it was just seeing her, that is like, oh, why do I have that reaction? I looked it up. That's why I had that reaction.
Good eye.
Yeah, that's quite a find. I never would have bothered checking out the focus group that closely. The moderator focuses on one particular quiet member because everyone else is thrilled with it. But then we've got Manu, or Manu, I think they say it in the episode, and he hasn't said anything. So the moderator's like, Manu, what's wrong? Don't you have any thoughts on this? And he has to needle him, and Manu's like, I just don't like him. I just don't like Frasier. That's the only dissenting feedback, though, so that shouldn't be that big of a deal.
Everyone else actually says it's the best radio show they've ever heard, and they can't wait to listen every single day.
Yep.
Which is the most absurd part of this entire focus group. How much those people loved it.
It's the biggest complimentary thing ever, and there's just one guy that says he doesn't like Frasier. Roz doesn't care. She's thrilled with that feedback, but Frasier is clearly rattled right away. That one dissenting opinion is throwing him, and you can tell like he just doesn't care about anything else at that point. He's only focusing on this one bad side. And then we get to see Bulldog. He just comes in the room, and they kind of as a group now start gaping at the focus group through the 2-sided glass and just watching everyone in there. And it's kind of creepy.
Yeah, and Bulldog, he's kind of the ringleader. He's like, no, trust me, guys, this fucking rules. I do this all the time. Like where I spy on people. I'm the invisible man, actually, also. I just love to look at people when they don't know they're being observed. And then, to their discredit, Frasier, Roz, and Clipboard Man,
get in on it.
They all get in on it.
Yeah, I guess we'll call him the data collector because he comes up later in the episode.
That's his serial killer name.
Oh, he comes up in the episode.
Yeah.
Also, what is this Clipboard Man that Roz wants to bang? Is he around more often than this episode?
I don't think so, yeah.
Yeah, because I was really trying to find his name in the credits so I could reference the important scene that happens with him, and it just says data collector. So that's who he'll be henceforth.
That's his name, though. Data collector. Worst fucking name.
Like the Star Trek guy that was actually named Data.
Oh,
it's also a reality show, Date a Collector.
Sounds awful. So we're back to Frasier's apartment after that creepy scene with them watching people, innocent people who have no idea they're being watched through the one-sided glass. And we've got Niles coming back over again. Marty's letting him in. They're about to head out to dinner. Niles is still turned on over this thing that he had with Daphne last time.
You'd imagine he's just drained himself of semen by this point.
You can see his face. He comes back there. He wants to worm in on dinner, and he wants to pick another fight with Daphne. So Marty says, look, she's really upset over this thing with Joe. So don't get under her skin. Don't let that happen again like last time. And Niles is immediately intrigued. He's like, oh, yeah, we wouldn't want that to happen. So at this point, Daphne enters the room, and Niles decides to bait her.
Chips, Daphne? Is that wise?
What do you mean?
Well, you know what they say. Many chips make for chubby hips. Waddle, waddle, waddle.
I know how to get this girl to like me. I'll push her over on the playground.
And the best part about this, of course, is like they're only like 2 seasons away from being husband and wife. And that's how he's treating his future wife, his poor future wife.
He also thinks a great way to get her worked up is to be mean about Winston Churchill.
Oh, yeah.
Like, it's just like, oh, all British people will defend Winston Churchill.
He has a bunch of interesting ploys there because, he's clearly just not well-versed in that sort of thing and just wants to get back to where he's turned on.
It's also really funny if like any British person were to come up to any American and talk shit on like Gerald Ford or something. Like, oh, this will really get him going.
That is, yes. However, if you do that to a very specific ex-president, a very recent ex-president,
You might get murdered.
You will be killed.
That's true.
I don't understand the cult of personality around a politician. That's just stupid, but
no.
that's a diatribe.
Yeah.
That's okay. Those are welcome here. At this point, after Niles is completely attempted to dismantle Daphne, Frasier returns. He's not happy about the results of the focus group because he's being a baby. Niles gets in another cheap shot at him about, can't imagine why someone wouldn't like you. So he's just being a horrible asshole this whole scene to everyone.
Do you think that gets Niles off too?
I hope not. But you just never know. Honestly, Niles is just like completely unbearable in this, mostly the entire show, but especially this scene.
I always like Niles more than Frasier, but
Me too.
this is like
He's nasty.
gross.
He seems super nasty
There
right
are two
now.
different kinds of unbearable, Frasier and Niles, and I think the reason Frasier bothers me more is Frasier is more arrogant.
Yes, and I hate arrogance. So, yeah.
No, that's true. That's fair. Yeah, I think Niles is he's just more of kind of neurotic, just kind of a strange type.
He seems almost to have been browbeaten more by Frasier when they were kids, and so
possibly by
he's
John
more
Mahoney.
Passive. I don't know. It seems like John Mahoney was either an absent dad or just like whatever when they were kids.
Right.
Yeah.
Or perhaps
ask your mother.
He's a reformed alcoholic. We have no way of knowing. There's no Frasier the Prelude yet.
The prequel, yeah.
You guys haven't seen my spec script.
Who would you cast as young Martin Crane?
Yeah.
Ooh,
Oh, it's
it's a tough one.
young Martin Crane?
Yeah. So this is
boy.
him
Going way back.
coming to age, getting a wife, having a kid, working with Force.
Yeah.
Michael Chiklis, right?
So, like, like a Michael Chiklis type, maybe. No, you know what would be awesome is Michael Shannon.
Oh, man.
He's like unhinged.
Yeah, I would love that. At this point where Frasier returns that, when he's all pissed off about the focus group thing, that Daphne just about falls for one of Niles' tricks. And Frasier catches this and tries to caution Daphne, don't get too worked up. He's going through a divorce. He's got a lot in his mind. He knows what he's doing. He's diffusing the conflict because he knows how much Niles is getting into it. And he's getting back at Niles because Niles is a dick face to him. So that stops that. And Daphne's not going to stoop to that level. Niles' plan is foiled.
But let me ask this. Okay, so season 3, episode 23, I think is this one. So he's divorcing Maris. In my mind, he and Maris were together 8 of 11 years. Obviously, that's not the case, but is this their real divorce? Are they done?
I believe so, yeah, because I checked, and it's shortly after the next episode we watch next week that Niles and Daphne start dating.
Oh, okay. So it is around here. And it's possible that it could just be me barely paying attention to Frasier in the background when I'm a kid, and my mom watches it. And 80% of the episodes I saw was with Maris being married to Niles. But I just could have sworn it was throughout most of the series.
Yeah, you kind of remember the whole always absent wife that Niles has. It seems like a character that was in more, but yeah, apparently she was just a few seasons.
Maybe we remember it really well because it was one of the show's early character hooks. Like,
we don't know
there's
a whole lot
character
about what happened in the last half of the show.
Kind of the mystery. I have a similar question, which is there's a line here when Frasier comes in and he's like, 11 out of the 12 people love me, but one didn't. And John Mahoney's like, FDR didn't even have that kind of approval, which do most episodes have 2 Roosevelt references in the first 8 minutes?
The good shows do. This one won some Emmys, Brian.
37 of them, to be precise.
Guys, we really need to figure out who is the snootiest of the 3 of us. So let's take a quick break, and then we'll come back and talk more Frasier.
So here's what happens now is they're going to dinner. There is no forward progress for the rest of this episode. They never make it to dinner. They're just in the car on the way to dinner the rest of the way.
Much to Marty's chagrin.
Yeah,
all he wants is dinner.
I kind of felt bad for him there.
Marty's chagrin could be an alternate title to this show.
Yeah, that's very true. That was the main themes, is him clashing with his pompous kids and trying to just get dinner and trying to sit in his easy chair with his dog.
From here on out, by the way, this episode becomes one of those episodes it's hard for me to watch because it's just a series of little bumbles that the wealthy Frasier is making to ruin a guy's life. And I mean, it's a sitcom, so I don't care if it's funny, but it isn't. So this episode just kind of turned out to be like annoying and frustrating.
Yeah. And I just, like I said, the fact that they were on the way to dinner and never got there for the last half of the episode just didn't work. I kept waiting for something else to happen, but this was it. And yeah, it's essentially where Frasier just completely comes unglued. They spot Manu on the way to dinner at his newsstand. So Frasier just has to know, like, can we talk to this guy right now and find out what he doesn't like about me? Because he's still obsessing, even though he promised he wouldn't, and they would just go to dinner. Some lumberjack place, I forget the restaurant name, but some lumberjack place with a burger that Marty wants, or a steak, I'm sure.
He has a coupon, I think.
I think you're right.
Of course he does. He's Marty.
So Frasier knows he can't talk to Manu directly. Manu thinks that the whole thing was anonymous, so it's not possible for him to confront him. So what better than to make your hungry old dad go out and confront the man himself? So he sends Marty to do it. Marty says, fine, but can we go eat afterwards? Frasier lies and says yes.
Frasier Lies and Says Yes is also an alternate title of this show.
I mean, I guess he meant to be truthful here, but of course he's not going to let it go. And you can see it. You can see it in his eyes. He's not letting this go.
Singular pursuit of something that doesn't matter at all that fuels Frasier.
So when Marty gets up there with Manu, he's not feeding him the story Frasier wanted him to feed him, something about how he's a depressed Cleveland businessman or something, and he wants to know if there's anybody local in the area who can help him. What do you think about Frasier Crane? So Marty just goes up and says, "Hey, my son's Frasier. He wants me to ask you, like, what you think, why you don't like him." And Manu's just a nice guy. He's like, "I didn't say that. I thought it was anonymous." Like he's trying to get out of it, and then when he realizes he can't, he's like, "They lied to us and they gave me a fanny pack or something."
Manu's giving the code of just being, "No, I didn't." And what that really means is not "no, I didn't." It means, "I don't want to talk about this. You're a stranger. Go away."
Sure. And I'm at work.
Yeah.
At my business.
At my business that I will own for another 10 minutes.
Basically, Marty's trying to get this over with so they can go to dinner, and he tells him the real story. Manu gets into the whole concept of how it was unethical that the focus group did that once he beats him down into it, but he gives him a one-word answer, which is just
finds him annoying.
Yeah. All the while Marty and Manu are talking, Niles is in the car bitching about how unsafe the area is, and he never stops
just the whole time. And he's frightened when the doors aren't constantly locked.
Why would you want to ever go to dinner with Niles? Travel with him at least.
I don't think they wanted him to go. He kind of forced his way in. But yeah, he was awful that whole time too. This episode is not good for Niles.
It's also weird because Niles, like, surely he's lived in large cities like his whole life.
Yeah.
It's weird that he would be mortified of Seattle at this point.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, it doesn't even really look like an area that would be dangerous.
No, it's like
it's
like a big time, like, it looks like a touristy area almost, like very crowded.
In the end, Manu's answer to Marty, just to get him to go away, is, "I just think he's annoying." So, and he leaves it at that. Marty's
and you can't argue with that.
No, you sure
Frasier's
can't.
annoying.
And Marty kind of thinks so too. Like, he's like, "Fair enough." And he leaves. He's like, "Good, we're going to get dinner." He's cheerful. He gets in the car, tells Frasier, "Hey, I just think you're annoying." Shockingly, Frasier is not satisfied with the answer that is annoying. It's just not enough information for him because he needs a whole thesis paper on it, apparently.
That ends in, "I do love you, Frasier."
Yeah, exactly. Ultimately that. Redemption. So he confronts Manu himself, then accidentally assaults him with, I guess, a yoo-hoo. I only got that from Manu's rant at the end.
Later, yeah.
Yeah. And then accidentally smashes his hand after that. It's like some kind of instigating.
It's like the Three Stooges.
It was an escalating series of events there. So in the end, Manu has to leave to get first aid or something. Presumably he has to not die because Frasier couldn't leave him alone.
He's trying to flee. He's trying to shut the grate that comes in front of his newsstand, so Frasier will leave him alone. And then Frasier's like, oh, I'm going to help you. And bam, that's when he crushes his hand.
Don't you know I'm a wealthy white man and the world is built for me. I need the answers I so desire.
And that's what I put on my note here, too. It's people who are, in particular, this could be anyone, people who are women or minorities or foreign people, try not to confront anyone ever because of people like Frasier. Because rich people like Frasier who can't be told no and have to get what they want in every single way, and they're just awful to do it. So I think we'll get more on what I feel about the show as a whole, but I think they did a good job with that because Frasier and Niles are insufferable.
They are insufferable.
Yeah, and they're clueless about it too.
Right down to, this wouldn't bother anyone but me, but I don't like earth tones for clothing. And
that's where you're going with this?
Frasier only wears brown and tan, which to me says you look like a big fucking turd, Frasier, walking around brown, like sand and poop, just all day long. I don't know. It's like his hair is light brown. His skin is kind of light.
Point there.
like he's kind of tan, like, and his clothes. It all just looks like one beige man who's pompous.
That's fair. Honestly, it's not an unfair rant.
But
at
I mean,
all.
it's a good way to go with him, though.
And you gave
it annoyed me specifically how he
gave
dresses.
way more details than Manu did, so he'd at least appreciate that. At least you went into detail about what you don't like about it.
Yeah, Manu never mentions Frasier's wardrobe or color palette.
No, he's too polite. And to be fair, Frasier does decide it's up to him to man Manu's stand after he runs away with his injured hand.
I liked this joke in a way, too, of someone who finds themselves like some sort of genius who has no mental peer, is unable to run the newsstand without burning it down in 5 seconds. I enjoyed that.
Yeah, so while he's manning the stand, a fan comes up to buy a paper, and somehow, yes, the stand is immediately up in flames, and it's just burning to the ground in front of us. And that happened almost instantly. It was within 5 minutes of Manu's departure.
Do you think there are, particularly back then, late 90s or early 90s, whenever in the 20 years that the show was running, do you think back then that there were radio celebrities?
Howard Stern.
Yeah, that's true. He's national. Local radio celebrities. Because by all accounts, Frasier's just Seattle.
I do think so.
Okay.
Because like there are still very, very popular like New York and LA radio DJs because it's just like an establishment thing.
Sure.
It's very, very weird. And also just from what we saw here, like I remember, we're old. In the 90s, in the early 90s, listening to music did involve the radio no matter who you were, even if you're some fucking snob like me. So, not that I was then, I was a child. So,
you were still
a little bit.
back then.
So, you had to encounter these personalities, and then out in the world, you'd hear somebody like, man, did you hear what the banger said on 97.7 The Wizard?
I kind of remember that, yeah.
That kind of stuff.
Yes, yeah.
Oh
Yeah.
my gosh, what is the guy here? There's a redneck Southern rock kind of radio station.
I know exactly what you're talking about.
Oh, there's a guy. I will try to think of his name.
Yeah,
but it's
and there's
just
another
like that.
guy that's called like the Beefmeister or
Yeah.
something. Do you know what I'm talking about?
It's like Matt Hockey and the Wiz.
Yeah,
tonight on
yeah.
KKLH 404.
Slam Simpson and the Great Lightning.
Dr. Nuts and the Hot Dog.
Wiley Fox and the Three Elders.
Oh, I'm sorry. Were we...
Okay,
We're out.
Get in on it, Joy. Come up
I
with some
couldn't think
radio
of
names.
any. I thought you guys did a great job, though. That was wonderful.
Puke Boy and the Wonder Twins.
That's really the end of that particular time. We actually have to flash forward in time now. So presumably Martin never got dinner because Manu's sitting dejected by his ruined stand with Frasier, who's still there with him. He's still there with him. He assures him, look, I'm going to cover your costs. Your livelihood has been destroyed, as Manu says here soon, but he's attempting to console him, and he tells him he'll compensate him. It's in this big reveal here where Manu does finally unleash on Frasier, here's why I don't like you.
I'll tell you why. I think you are a smarty pants. I was too polite to say that before, but then you spied on me. You stalked me. You badgered me. You poured yoo-hoo down my dockers. You crunched my hand. And then, as if all that was not enough, you burned down my newsstand, my livelihood, a gift to me from my beloved uncle. May he rest in peace.
I love that. The writers of
Bring it,
Frasier,
Manu.
the whole concept of Frasier is that Frasier literally just destroyed a man's life.
Yeah.
And the sitcom audience is like, he said you who
Which
down
again
at
kind
Dockers."
of accomplishes the goal that I think it's trying to.
And
Yeah.
Frasier's just thinking, like, what's the big deal? I'm going to pay for it. It's no
Yeah.
problem.
It's also
Whatever.
funny how if you go back to the concept of having a focus group at the beginning of the episode, 11 of the people think he's a genius who they want to listen to every day, and he literally ruins the life of the 12th person.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's totally a reasonable thing to do.
And saying, by the way, you poured yoo-hoo down my Dockers is
Which,
fine.
by the way,
That made
if
me
I
laugh.
had a nickel for every yoo-hoo that goes down my Dockers,
Ugh.
I actually couldn't understand what he said when I was watching that. I thought he said knockers. Like I was like, is he did
His
he
boobs.
Say, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Did he pour it down?
he's
his
very
chest?
proud of his breasts.
But the next line that he says actually makes me laugh really hard. And I don't know why. Maybe it's the way he said it, but just the combination of words is, you crunched my hand.
Yeah, I liked that too. Also, the way he's just rapid fire, you can
Mhm.
tell right here, even Tony Shalhoub has timing, has
Yeah.
like comedic timing.
Well, I looked this up too because his character in this dials up the accent.
Yeah, which
So
I don't think is.
It's not real because Wings was on a little before this. So I just quickly YouTubed a compilation of Tony Shalhoub on Wings, and he has less of an accent than I've ever heard. So I think for Frasier, they're just like, nope, play up the accent. This is a product of the times, and we've had that a couple of times in shows we watched
since then.
and that is most definitely one of them of just lean into the character.
And I'm not like, I guess what I would say is this isn't like some of the episodes we've seen where it's like, you should not be doing that.
Right. This wasn't, it was a character trait, but it wasn't a flawed character trait.
Well,
it wasn't
and
something
Tony
they pointed
Shalhoub's
out.
is not like David Spade.
Yeah. He's Lebanese, I believe. So he's actually from the area that would have that.
And you could argue the story maybe benefits from the idea of the immigrant's dream being stomped out by Frasier and giving him a thicker accent. I don't know.
Sure. Yeah, it's not totally unjustifiable. I didn't have a problem with it for sure, but I see what...
I mean, I had a problem with the episode sucking.
Oh, yeah. Well, that's a less of a thing that we can really... We can't do much about that, really.
No, all we can do is build the world's first time machine, go back, get in that writer's room.
Also, Frasier's response to that big diatribe is really one of relief. That wasn't so hard. He's not, like, at that point, like, you would think he'd be sympathetic. I realize what I've done. Nah. He's like, yeah, you gave me my closure. Thanks.
That's just, like, again, feeds into what Van was saying earlier about the whole thing is the Frasier show. If he's like, I don't really care about your life. I've gotten my answer.
Yeah, exactly. And it really is completely emphasized in this episode perfectly, I guess. So maybe it's a better episode than we thought.
I think it's like, it carries its themes fine, but it's not entertaining.
I think this is a product of the old method of making shows and sitcoms of we have to have 24 a season. You just have to pump these things out.
Yeah, and they kind of didn't have much else to go on. Also, this would have been right near the end of the season. So maybe it was like, we don't have much else. Let's have them not get to dinner for half the showing.
Yeah, and every 7.5 minutes, we kind of need to break into the next little segment of the show.
Also, we didn't get into the fact that right after this, we get the closed credits where Roz and the data collector are going at it and Bulldog's watching through the one-sided glass.
Creepy.
You know what that's called, though.
Voyeurism?
That's a hot close.
Ooh, that is a hot close.
Oh, yeah, he was doing a hot close.
Bring
I
it
imagine
back.
he had at least a little bit of a tepid rope while this was going on.
I'm at the show, but Bulldog too. Yeah, like for sure. Well, that's all we have for this episode. I think we're all in agreement. It wasn't wonderful. I think we had a thought that perhaps it knew what it was doing and maybe they were running out of material, but Van picked this one on purpose because it came up as one of the worst, and that's good to know. I was very glad that it, like I mentioned earlier, I was really glad it wasn't the better one of the two.
And it's not irredeemable.
No.
Again, I just found it really boring.
It was, yeah. Drug on toward the end there, that second half.
Well, that's the question for me then is if this is the worst that Frasier has to offer, is that bode well for Frasier?
I think so. I mean, if this is what the show always was, I wouldn't watch it.
No.
But I wouldn't necessarily think of it in scathing terms like I would like The Big Bang Theory or something.
Nah, it'd just be kind of another sitcom, like
another
just
thing
about
that
any other.
exists.
Yeah, and in many ways it was at parts, and like I said, about that last half is pretty bad, but it had a good peak, and I remember seeing several of those, so I remember enjoying a lot of them. This one I didn't enjoy, and I like to believe I wouldn't have enjoyed it when I was watching this commonly too at like 14, but you never know. I might have thought it was funny that he smashed the poor immigrant's hand with with his own newspaper stand. We can't really draw this one out any more than we already have, guys. It's going to be one of the shorter ones, but it deserves it, I think, in my opinion. And I am somewhat of a Frasier expert, so if I feel that way, it must be true. But we do have something we want to cover before we leave it here, and then we'll see you guys next week for another bonus episode. And we will be covering a much better Frasier episode that we'll have a lot more to talk about.
Finally, we're going to get to Monkey Bone. I've been waiting the whole time for this one.
Yeah, of course. For now, though, Brian, you have something for us.
I sure do. A few episodes back, several episodes back, we mentioned that if you would be so kind as to go onto iTunes and rate and review us, that we will read your review on this very podcast. And we've received a few new reviews, and we wanted to share those with you guys right now. Hopefully, the three of you I'm about to read the reviews from, hopefully you're listening right now. And if you are, we love you.
And thank you for listening.
Not you, Russell.
Speaking of Russell, who we do love, and Russell comes to us via the sport of baseball, which is another thing that Van and I podcast
He plays
about.
baseball.
Yeah, and yeah,
Is it
it's
Russell
Russell Branyan.
Oh, wow, we all went there. Wow.
I mean, there's not any other ones.
So this is Russell HW. He says, fun show, great personalities. I think that's debatable. And fun conversation.
Very succinct and very well
succinct.
said, Russell.
Thank you, Russell. We appreciate it. I think that all of our personalities are terrible, but that's okay.
Which is why you agreed to do this with us.
Yeah, exactly. I was like, oh man, you know what people love is three guys no one would ever want to listen to talking.
Perfect. Described our show to a T. I will say real quick with Russell, thank you once again for doing that. I knew Russell from Twitter and fantasy baseball. He actually kind of continued or helped create a long-running gag with a different podcast, a baseball podcast, which you should all be listening to. It is called the Hey, It's Enrico Palazzo podcast, I believe. I know the Hey, It's Enrico Palazzo. I got that down.
I think that's right, all the way through.
Anyway, so I did a guest spot on this show, and the host is a guy named Michael Govier. Michael's awesome. He does that. He does a couple other podcasts. Govier asked me some questions on his show that were not baseball related, and somehow we got on the topic of both favorite fruit and favorite movie, and somehow he said his favorite fruit was a plum. And I took umbrage with that. I'm like, whose favorite fruit is a plum? Really? You can like plums, but who's like, no, a good plum, that's the way to go. And then the favorite movie was Master and Commander, starring Russell Crowe.
I'm aware of this from Michael's Twitter, so I did know about this.
I can see him eating a plum and watching that as we speak.
Have either of you watched that movie?
I was like 20.
I've never seen it.
My dad reads all those books by Patrick O'Brien. Yeah, there's like 20 of them. And the guy was like a naval expert.
Oh, okay.
He knew his shit. And the sailing descriptions in it, which my dad's huge on sailing, are apparently just
accurate
essays. Yeah, it's like and it's very detailed. So the movie didn't portray that though. So we can't give him a pass just because that's his favorite movie in this case.
I'm picturing your dad sitting in his den, like reading his Master and Commander things. Yeah, eating a plum and nodding solemnly as like the sails are described correctly.
You're probably not far off.
It's a flying jib. Yeah. So anyway, this joke evolved over time on Twitter and around and around. And in fact, they made Master and Commander GIFs for Michael and about the show and on and on. Apparently, there is a prequel movie being made, by the way, not with Russell Crowe in it.
I hope so.
Oh, wow.
So thank you, Russell. We appreciate it. He did a guest spot on the Hey Enrico Palazzo podcast. Go listen to that if you want. That's all I have to say about that. So let's move on to the next one.
If he's not Master and Commander yet, what is he if it's a prequel? Is he apprentice? And
subservient and lesser or something? I don't know. We also have a review from a gentleman who, I assume this is his real name, Golf Lundgren.
That's my favorite one. I texted you guys when this came in.
I actually haven't read this one, so I'm curious. That's a hilarious name.
You're like, oh, Golf has this to say. I have to listen.
And it is Golf with 2 Fs also.
Good.
Golf Lundgren says, great show. It's funny. I like to try and watch along with the shows when I can. The audio's gotten better as you've put more episodes out and sounds great now. That is all courtesy of Van. Thank you for the hard work, Van. He doesn't say that. That's me editorializing the part about you.
Well, I don't care that you said
it.
I would have liked it if he said it.
If Golf had said it.
And Golf also says, I request you guys do those CW shows like Smallville or Roswell because they're really, really bad. Keep up the good work.
Now, are you familiar with Smallville?
I've seen about 6 seasons of Smallville.
Okay, yes, because of your ex.
Yes.
And I have not seen much Smallville. That particular ex was not quite as into it when I was around her more often. However, she was a big Superman fan, and that show's about Superman. What I did watch was awful.
It is a really goofy show that does not know it. It's really deathly serious, and it's a CW show. Guess how much it cost to make? $18, but they go for it.
Yeah.
And it's bad.
So those are shows we'll have
my memory of it. Yeah,
sure.
I totally agree with Golf here.
Riverdale, is that the Archie one? That one was also a CW show.
I think
a much more recent one.
Mm-hmm. They're all just bad.
Our third and final review we'd like to read.
Do we have another one?
Oh, yes, it's from Good Body Boy, which is just a pretty great name. Good Body Boy says, hilarious stuff. Some of the shows these guys watch are so weird. I actually sat down and watched the motorcycle show with Johnny Cash, and it was as terrible as they made it sound. I like when they do new stuff too, though. I loved Hey Dude when I was a kid, and it does not sound like it aged well.
It didn't.
No, although the baseball episode was a ton of fun.
Oh, it was a lot of fun.
Yeah, it was.
And so was Renegade, so good on you for watching Renegade.
Yeah, actually, more than good on you. You're doing something Van probably does every day still. Are you still watching Renegade on the reg?
I haven't watched one in about a week, but I will say I do still watch them fairly regularly.
So thank you to the 3 of you that left reviews, and we really appreciate it. It's one of the best ways to get your podcast trending in the right direction. So if anyone would like to, please go onto iTunes or anywhere, rate and review us, download us, I don't know.
Don't just listen to us and not tell anyone.
Write your senator about how awesome we are, whatever you want to do.
Write Eddie the dog about how great we are.
Send
in
some
doggy
fan mail.
heaven.
Yeah.
And since I'm in the, shameless self-promotion
Might as well,
mode,
finish it up for me.
Yeah. We're, this very podcast is on Twitter at Boob Tube Boys. We also have boobtubeboys.com, where we are writing little posts that often correspond with the shows that we're watching. I recently wrote about the cast of Queer Eye and their qualifications to actually perform the tasks they're performing on that very reality show. You can also find us all individually on Twitter. I am at Loud Guitar Brian Van.
At Manly Van Lee.
Spencer.
The number 3 French_hen.
Hell yeah. Look at all that advertising. And any parting thoughts from you, gentlemen?
Yeah, we are on Instagram and we're going to be on YouTube. I'm just going to start promising it.
Do it. It'll make me do it, at least. I will say that.
That's all I'd like to throw in. That was my promise for the day.
Once again, thank you everyone for putting out the extra reviews on iTunes. Like Brian said, that helps a lot. And he mentioned saying something along the lines of driving the numbers or whatever. And our numbers are great. They are steadily improving constantly. And it kind of surprises me. But the best way to do that is by word of mouth. So if you have friends out there who you think might enjoy us, tell them about the podcast, because it just gets exponentially bigger, the number of listeners we
just
have
like
when
a
you do
pyramid
that.
Scheme.
Yeah, you tell 2 pyramids to listen to the show. Before you know it, 6 pyramids are listening to the show. It's
and
great.
everyone sees them and they're like, why are these pyramids conspiring against us? But seriously, it's also just like really heartening to see new reviews and things like that. So thank you guys.
Makes us more excited to do it than we already were.
Very, very much. But for this week, wait, what is it? What? I hear something. It's tossed. I hear the blues are calling. Hold on, I'll be back.
Hey baby, I hear the blues are calling, tossed salads and scrambled eggs. And maybe I seem a bit confused. Yeah, maybe, but I got you pegged. But I don't know what to do with those tossed salads and scrambled eggs. They're calling again.